Dean, we've been on the RFID bandwagon for a while.
Yes, we have.
And more of our reseller partners and integrators and ISVs are joining as well.
This is true. Yeah.
But RFID is still not quite as simple as slap a tag on it, get a reader, boom, done.
I know. We really want it to get that simple. Like,
I mean, we all wish
RFID in a box.
Simple.
We refer to that. Like
Yes,
I can
yes.
just buy it off the shelf at Walmart.
Yeah. But we're not there yet.
We're not there yet, dude.
Truly making RFID a big part of your business and your solution portfolio will likely mean you need some partners.
This is true.
You need someone to fill in the gaps.
For sure.
Things you aren't quite as good at, don't maybe know as much about, especially if you're just getting started in RFID.
You need to be humble.
You're
right.
Definitely. I feel like that could be said about a lot of a lot of things across our channel, honestly. But yes, humbleness could help you out here.
Right.
Well, one such partner in that space is Atlas RFID, and today we are talking to Stephen Wood and Tim Prybl from Atlas.
Good guys.
We have them on the show to share their experience with RFID, the RFID explosion. They've got over a decade plus of experience.
I know lots of
over a quarter century between them of experience. They know what this is like. They know what to expect. They're going to help you talk about what maybe you might not be considering, or what maybe you don't have the expertise in with deploying RFID solutions, what partnerships with Atlas would look like, how can they assist you with revenue growth, when you should be bringing them into a conversation. Hint, it's probably earlier than you would already think to do so. So this is the episode where we come up with a business that is probably doomed to fail. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Welcome to BlueStar Nation. BlueStar Nation podcast is brought to you by Elo. Elo's iSeries 5 has arrived. Actually, I think it's been out for a while, but
it's arrived.
It's around. It's there. You should be. And if you somehow didn't know it's arrived, well, now you do. iSeries delivers the modularity that businesses need in a sleek, durable, fixed tablet form factor, complete with a 15-inch full HD touch display and flexible Android 14 OS, a powerful Qualcomm 6490 processor, Wi-Fi 6E, optional PoE, and 4 Edge Connect ports. The iSeries 5 provides the versatility to fit almost any application like self-service kiosks, POS terminals, price checkers, KDS, and industrial automation. Is there anything this thing can't do?
Yeah, what else would you possibly need?
Why don't we have an iSeries 5 here when we're doing our episodes?
Because we're not doing POS.
We're not actually doing anything. We don't need something quite that good for our piddly little podcast.
Quite the Cadillac for just a little reference model.
All right, I'm just saying, if you want to throw a nice monitor our way, we'd set it up and talk about it.
But anyway.
Available in 10, 15, and 22 inches, the iSeries 5 easily configures to fit the needs of your business and your customers' businesses, from signage and point of sale to self-service, automation controls, and much more. Now you can also get the thin and sleek slate and the durable steel models, making the iSeries 5 the ideal touch computer for industries like retail, hospitality, industrial, and healthcare. To learn more, check out data sheets and select the best iSeries configuration for your next project. Check out the link in the show notes or contact the BlueStar Elo team. All right, we have two fantastic guests today.
We do.
I love it when we have multiple guests. It's a lot lighter on us.
It is.
We can just we can just
sit back and listen.
Let the brilliant people do all the talking. Yeah. First up, we have Stephen Wood. He is the VP of Sales for Atlas RFID. So, Stephen, tell us a little about yourself, your background. How did you get where you are? Maybe a little bit about what your day to day is like there at Atlas.
Yeah, sure thing. So I've been with Atlas for 10 years, focused on the RFID industry and RFID, technical products since the origin with the company. Prior to that, I worked in retail, and actually while I was in retail, I had, exposure to RFID working for JCPenney for quite some time as they were deploying their RFID system. So I had a little bit of insight on what the technology was capable of prior to, being a part of the industry itself. But, my role here at Atlas is leading our sales team. I have a large inside sales team as well as, a team that's boots on the ground with customers. And it's my job to lead our team and our sales strategy and really help define what's next for our team.
Nice.
Yeah, I always love when the folks have the retail background because usually means you're used to dealing with adversity. You understand the trials and tribulations of sales, and you've probably had some experience with either technology that worked or the technology that very much didn't.
That's right. Yeah.
There you go. Our other guest is Tim Prybl. He is the Director of Professional Services at Atlas as well. So, Tim, same question for you. Give us a little about your background and your day-to-day work.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. So I started at Atlas almost 14 years ago now. I was actually an intern straight out of college, working part-time. I've worn a lot of hats here so far. So I was an account manager, an account executive, a race timing specialist. I managed our partners and our product portfolio. Even worked in our software division for a little while. But most recently, I've been heading off and leading our professional services department, where our main goal on a day-to-day basis is we understand that technology is tricky, and we want to work with organizations to figure out how they can adopt that technology, how to best use it, how they can leverage it for different processes. So it's a lot of working from a consultative approach with various different types of companies in different industries to figure out how they can leverage specifically RFID for their processes.
Nice.
Very timely, I would say.
I would say so. Yeah, it's very timely, and we got two veterans that understand the business, understand what it takes, and I kind of like that's. I think that's a good place to start too, but given that you do have the time and the experience, and you've kind of seen how RFID has evolved over the last decade plus. So, Tim, it's been obviously RFID has been a big part of this channel for a long time now, but the growth is obviously really starting to spike in some recent years. We've been talking about it a lot the last few years. Dean and I, for the last 6 years that we've done this podcast, keep claiming it was the year of RFID. Correct. But I think we decided that last year was
officially the year of the RFID. Yes, exactly. Of RFID. Yes.
So I wanted to get that from your perspective, having gone through that whole cycle, and probably from people being extremely skeptical to a little more on board, but also still needing a little bit of assistance there. What has that looked like from your perspective, and how did Atlas build its experience and expertise based on what you've been seeing out there in the market for a while now?
Yeah, I think you kind of answered it. It takes time. So I think our biggest value add is that we've been around for nearly 20 years. We have reps at the plate, and exposure is the best teacher that I've seen. And we really put ourselves out there as the experts. So if you go to our website, you'll find a lot of content, blog articles, white pages, different things that we've been developing. We've been developing them since the start of the company for free, just in case someone has questions about RFID or about the technology, how it might be used. You can actually go back and see some videos from around 14 years ago of me doing YouTube tutorial videos or content about just how RFID might be used, how to test with it. I call that baby Tim, pre-beard, pre-hairline, but and we're also one of the cool things that we are is we're more than a store, as we kind of talked about earlier. We're a one-stop shop for a full solution. So a lot of people think of Atlas as a hardware store, an e-commerce area where you can buy things. But because we are the full solution provider, we're able to look at these projects from various different angles. We're able to see what it takes to not only put together the correct hardware solution, but also from a software perspective, what all is involved with integrating that software platform with third-party systems, with getting it up and running, with doing a trial pilot project in a sandbox. And then from a professional services standpoint, you don't just install stuff. Is there infrastructure needed? What kind of facilities requirements are there? So we're able to help out and use all of this that we've seen over the years to talk with customers about what all is involved in that entire project from concept to deployment.
There you go. Nice. Steve, what about your perspective? What have you seen happen over the last decade?
Well, I think that, we've had the opportunity as a company to evolve with the technology. Even in my tenure, right? 10 years ago, our biggest challenge with the applications that we were deploying was not reading all the tags. Our biggest challenge today, in many cases, is reading too many tags, right? And I think that's a demonstration of just how far the technology has come, right? Like we're reading tags that are, outside the range of the tags of interest, right? And we have to make accommodations to the system to be able to accommodate that, which is the complete opposite of what we were experiencing 10, 15 years ago with the technology. We've also seen tag yield rates, right? Like the ICs are better, right? They're more sensitive. The reader technology is more sensitive, which is enabling, more applications to be possible. But having said all that, right, just like Tim mentioned, it's really important that we consider the physical environment and what challenges someone, is going to experience, right? Like we can't read through metal. We still can't read through water, right? Taking into account those factors to be sure we're making the right recommendations to, ultimately provide a solution, because, an RFID application that, provides partial data isn't a solution. It's only those applications that are deployed that are providing adequate data to help the business make a decision that's going to take them to the next level that really matters to us. And from our perspective, that's where we can really help drive that long-term business with the client.
So let's take a look at it real quick from the kind of the high level of like common mistakes, right? So you guys have been in RFID for a long time. And, for us, as John was riffing, we've been talking about it for a long time, but now there's some gravity around it, right? Now there's some traction in the marketplace around RFID, but what advice would you give companies, where you see common mistakes when they assume RFID maybe that's just a hardware upgrade to their barcoding or something like that they're doing today, more than, or, where it should be thought of as more transformative in what it can do. Can you advise, or like just really high level, what are some common mistakes, walking in the room that you see almost time after time? It's like, well, these people, they just don't get it. Here's a common mistake. Besides the fact that it can't read through water.
Yeah. Well, I think, a lot of times we'll receive a request that's like, hey, I need a tag that's this size.
Tag related. Yeah, right.
And well, they're not considering all the other all the other components that are really necessary, right? They're thinking about, I got to accommodate, I got to find a tag that's going to accommodate my product. But I think that the important piece is thinking about the application as a whole, right? As the solution as a whole. Like the tag strategy, the tag selection is a huge piece of that equation. But the reader system, the antennas that we're using, the handheld readers that we're using, right? The infrastructure that's behind it, as Tim mentioned, but also what software application. I think that's one of the challenges that our team kind of has in communicating, just why a good software application is required, as even if it's a middleware application that's tying together the RFID, hardware, the data that we're generating from the RFID hardware, and connecting that data with, ERP, WMS, and the list goes on, right? Like making that transaction happen. And I think that a lot of times it takes a few steps to be able to clearly communicate, like, hey, we need to make these associations, this RFID tag data association with the data that actually matters to you, right? Like once we make those associations, the RFID tag data is irrelevant, right? Now you're working with data that matters to you, that's going to enable you to make business decisions. I think that's one of the things that's kind of challenging for customers to grasp, is like, we can't encode all this data to the RFID tag, and that's really not the objective. Like, we want to, in a much more efficient way, just take that unique ID and associate it to the data that you're already familiar with, right? And then you're able to process that more efficiently, more smoothly through your system.
Scott, that's got me thinking, like, what in your experience is the most common way to integrate that data? Is it through the WMS typically, or is it right into the ERP? I mean, I know that there's, a vast amount of ways that this data can come into so that it can be, utilized in an effective manner. But is that, where are you seeing most of that integration happen? Is it? I would assume it's at the WMS, but maybe I'm wrong. Are you, is that where you find most of your activity happening?
Yeah. So generally you need a piece of middleware or software to get that tag data off of the reader and into your system of record. So for the, and that's why, we might talk a little bit later about our software platform, Avancir, which is, for all intents and purposes, a full-fledged inventory and asset management system that you can use as your system of record to find information about your items. But it doesn't need to be. Sometimes you just need a piece of software that's on the reader level that's then integrating with and pushing and updating information in your ERP. So a lot of readers either have an onboard IoT connector that allows you to push and populate at an endpoint, but then there's always a little bit of work to be able to do that handshake between that reader and your system of record. Usually if a company's ingrained with SAP, they don't want to see a new system. So our software will kind of play in the background and just feed SAP or whatever ERP or WMS, MES that they are using to provide relevant information about that item.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Like we're on an Oracle backbone, and our IT department, they don't want you touching Oracle. So it's like, sure. Yeah, right? Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. So, and you know what? But going back to my original question around misconceptions or hardest things, I think that might be one of the areas. I always think that might be one of the areas that people just don't realize. You know, okay, the data collection, Scott, to your point, is really kind of secondary or almost tertiary to the overall scope and how we're going to get this information to the right spot and then manipulate it accordingly, right? Yeah. In a meaningful way to the business so they can get what they need out of it. That's right. Yeah,
exactly. So let's back up there. And Stephen, you kind of illustrated this when you were talking about some of the things that people just don't expect or not thinking about when they're putting together an RFID solution. So I want to think about that from the VARs perspective too, because we know that more and more of our customers are starting to actually do this. They're starting to integrate it into their portfolio. Maybe those that either used to be barcoding experts and are now trying to figure out, all right, I know I need to take this next step. Or maybe just someone who is doing something different but working in an industry that needs RFID and recognizes this needs to be part of my portfolio now too. When you're talking to them, and maybe from your own experience too over the years, what are some of those other components that are missing? What are some things that people just don't think about? Because I also know there are some VARs sometimes that decide to go down this path and quickly get frustrated because they think it's a little more dense and complex than they were expecting. And part of that obviously is because they don't have a partner like you potentially out there helping them. So talk about these things that they're not really thinking about or considering as they're building up their RFID infrastructure within their business, and maybe where is not necessarily a part of their strengths that a partner like you can bring to the table to help them out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's important to ground everything in a business case, right? So our most successful RFID deployments have worked well, or it's really important that they work well for both, the back office team that's actually reviewing the data, but also for the team that's maybe on the plant floor that's actually using the technology, right? It has to work on both sides of that equation. So it's important as when we're approaching an application or, a reseller is approaching an application, that they're considering not just the technology, but also the process change that may be required, right? Like managing, change management is really, really important. And I think moving into an application, it's important that you understand what the customer's current status quo is, and then work from there to really give them not just guidance on how the technology works or what a tag is, what an antenna is, what a reader is, but also we're going to have to make these steps in order for the system to work for you. We're going to have to, walk on this side of the wall versus that side of the wall, if you will, right? To be able to, get that data that we need to use to make those decisions. So, our objective, when we're approaching any application is always our first question. It's technology aside. Let's put that aside for a moment. What is the business problem you are trying to solve or you need to solve, right? And as we flesh out that question, it gives us a really solid foundation to establish some level of ROI, right? To help the customer decide to really own this or not. And I think that's a critical piece Tim's always talking about, it's important that we identify our champion within the customer organization that's going to really help drive the application forward, to really help put some skin in the game for the client to really make that investment. But that's kind of what I think about, right? Technology aside, let's really identify the problem that you're experiencing and then, work towards identifying what you really envision the solution being with a technology like RFID. I think that's a really important component to lay the foundation, right? Foundation is incredibly important, right? A really solid starting point that's going to enable you to really ask more questions, get more context of why the customer needs this, specific application, which enables you to speak to the value that's going to add. I think that's the most critical component that a lot of people in the industry are just not considering at this point. I mean, everyone loves a purchase order. I'm a sucker.
You're in sales, right? You love the PO, right? That's right.
Right. But I think that it's really important that, if we want those purchase orders to continue to flow, that we understand the foundation that the customer, is working with and the problem that they're ultimately trying to solve.
So, Tim, do you find yourself doing that, kind of redesigning and setting that expectation with the end user, the customer, as you're developing that? do you feel it's as important to have that conversation like, hey, by the way, you're doing this process like this today. Here's what it would look like with this process. So here's what the redesign looks like, and here's how that may impact your business. Do you find yourself doing that a lot?
Yeah, I think you took the words that I was going to use. Expectation setting is most of my job. Right.
You're right. Okay.
During the first call, it's expectation setting, because they might say, hey, I heard that you can get 30 plus feet of read range with passive RFID. And I say, sure, you can, but it depends, right?
But, right.
Or the tag the size of a grain of rice. And an expectation setting where you're not just mounting one device in the middle of your warehouse and it just sees everything. It's not the all-knowing eye. Helping them understand that it can be a useful technology, but that it will, take time and take effort and take a champion on your end, like Stephen mentioned. And kind of to piggyback off of what Stephen said, we've been deploying solutions for nearly 20 years. Atlas actually started as a solution provider, even before we had an online store. And we learned early on, I remember one of the first systems that we deployed, the customer wrote us the check. We're like, great, we deployed the system. And then checking the back end, we're like, they're not even logging in. They're not even using our systems. And come to find out, kudos to us, we didn't train them on it. We didn't go through the process of making sure that they were bought in, that they had the SOPs in place. And so they were actually just kind of going around and doing what they were doing before they had the RFID system. And if we would have taken the time to show them how to use it, it would expedite their process, save them time, save them money. So that change process of getting a champion and having them actually bought in to use the system is huge.
Gotcha. When you think about the reseller and their business process, I wonder, maybe you guys could comment here, where do VARs kind of underestimate the cycle or the sales cycle and what it's going to take on the RFID implementation? Where do they underestimate kind of the time or part of the process? Is it like a site survey? Because maybe they're not used to doing site surveys where you got to walk around and get an RF site survey, right? You got to figure out what the materials are, where's the signal going to bounce and all that kind of stuff. If you're just doing barcodes, you don't have to worry about that so much, right? Is that where they drop the ball, or where are some expectations from the reseller? Where do they miss sometimes? Either one of you.
Well, I can speak to the site survey because that's kind of my bread and butter. Us going on site and performing a process analysis and a site survey and even on-site testing and qualification can significantly expedite the process of adopting a technology like RFID. Because what we've learned over the years is that so many organizations have this trial and error phase that's very fatiguing. And, we talked about the history of RFID where like every year we're like, is this the year? And we've been watching it since, 2008, since we started. And we've talked to customers that tell us, hey, back in the day, we tried to use RFID. It didn't work well. But come to find out they were just doing it incorrectly. They were putting, they weren't considering factors like water or metal. And so they might have gone through a 6-month trial and error phase where they're testing out different things, trying different tags. And they're like, this isn't working. RFID is not going to work for us. But what our team does, the professional services team, a lot of what we do is go to the customer to help them qualify the right hardware, help them understand how it will work, set those right expectations. And then that turns a 6-month trial and error phase into a 1-week process where they are confident, they know exactly how it will work, how to use it, and when to use it in their different processes. But then Stephen probably has a different view of the entire sales cycle on the sales side.
Well, that was the point that I was going to make, Tim, is, we really want to try to enable the shortening of that sales cycle. Because it is, especially when you involve, a software application and you have to have discussions about how the data is going to integrate, right? So now we're interfacing with multiple teams, not just an engineering team or like process engineers or what have you. That's really kind of envisioning what the solution is, but also having IT involved, right? So I think that it's having all of a contributing factor is like having all the right people at the table to have that discussion, so everybody's speaking the same language. And I think that that's a really big challenge to sort of get your arms around, depending upon who the client is. But being able to provide that direction and and control the conversation, right? Like, hey, these are the folks that we need to talk to in order to help make this application, successful, right? And I think that's one of the biggest things that a lot of folks miss out on is just having the right people at the table, requesting that all the right contacts at the organization are involved. So as we're moving this conversation down the line, there's alignment, right? And we get to the point of installation and everybody's on the same page. I think that's a critical component of making those deployments possible.
Yeah, you guys referred to having a champion on the other side, previously. Who typically is that? I mean, is it more of a technical person, or do you guys really advocate having some kind of executive champion that's not going to poo-poo it based on price or whatever? I mean, who is that typically? I'm just curious.
Yeah. I think we might have different answers for this, but I think it depends on the application and what problem you're trying to solve. Because if it's from an auditing perspective, maybe that champion's in finance, because there are people that are getting yelled at if their audits are failing, right?
Gotcha.
If it's a shipping receiving, maybe it's a GM or an operational manager, or maybe it's a process engineer who's tasked with making processes more efficient. So whoever is going to be more delighted by selfishly
accuracy and all those, right? Exactly. Yeah. I hear you.
That's who the person is that we want to be the champion, because we can't be there, every day. And we need someone there that can own the system and make sure that it's working properly.
Yeah, and I completely agree with what Tim had to say. I think that there's a lot of applications that we've seen grow from like the influencer level up to the C-suite level, and we're able to kind of draw that back to the preparation work that we're doing with the champion, right? To give them or put them in a position where they can make a valuable presentation to their leadership team as to why they should or why they shouldn't do this, right? Attaching values to what it's actually going to cost their team, which is always a challenge, right? Like we have folks that ask us all the time, hey, what's this going to cost me? It's like, well, it's not as straightforward as just like, hey, here's a price. Like we need to get to the bottom of really understanding all of the details to be able to provide you with that information. But I think it's equipping that influencer, that champion, to then take that documentation, that presentation to the various outlets in their team to communicate like, hey, this is what I've been researching, and this is why I think we should do it. I think that's a really important component that we help customers with all the time.
Stephen, have you developed like some sales tools on that front, like configurators or little whatever tools that you can kind of plug in some general information to try to get outputs that are relative to ROI and stuff like that? Or is it really truly just so bespoke that you just need to have the conversation and dig into it kind of a thing? Yeah,
I think that it is still fairly bespoke at this time frame, although the technology is evolving, and I think that at a certain point, we will be able to enable something like that. But I think a lot of times we need to communicate to clients exactly what a read point is, right? And there may be variability in price as to what a read point that's going to function is going to be, right? There are read points that could be, $2,500 list price. There are other read points that are well over $10,000 list price, right? I think there's that variability that, it's really kind of hard to kind of put that in place effectively. But I think that especially as it relates to the software application, that's a little bit easier to get to a place. That's getting much to an easier place to be able to provide, hey, this is what the price point is going to be to make that happen. We just got to fill in the place in the blanks with the hardware and the services that's required to make the application happen.
Cool. Yeah. BlueStar, we have these grandiose illusions of being able to put everything in a box. So we have in-a-box solutions, right? So I was kind of probing there a little bit, Stephen, to figure out,
it's a great idea,
Yeah, right. Well, it's good news for the industry that it's still bespoke, right? So there's value that the value-added reseller is bringing to the equation, but we're not quite there where you can just go to whatever Walmart and buy RFID off the shelf.
Which is for the
solution.
Best. Yes, because that's not what people need.
Plug it into your SMB and boom.
Yeah, that's a great point, because there's still a lot of value to add and a lot of margin to be made.
Yeah, right.
With the guidance that you're able to provide the customer, right? And they're obviously they're in need of that, right? And if we can shrink a 6-month research cycle down to a week's time frame, right? Like there's an immense amount of savings for the client, but an immense amount of value that we're adding, and we're making money because of it, right? So there's real value there. So I think that there is that opportunity that a lot of resellers could take advantage of.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Tim, I think the thing you said that really stood out to me was delighting people. Like, and I think that should be a sales mantra, for any sale, but especially I think in this particular.
We delight people. Yes.
Yeah, it's like who can I find that we know will be delighted by having a solution implemented, and will be the person that will be the champion, that will be riding hard, that will be saying, "Hey, I love what these guys did." Because to me, RFID feels like the ultimate kind of consultative sale.
It does.
I think we talk about that a lot. And there's a lot of, and I think you should always have a consultative mind frame about any sales approach. It shouldn't be just, they need a barcode scanner. Here's a barcode scanner at the end.
Yeah.
But I think this one in particular is one where you've got to ask a lot of questions. You've got to get a lot of details. And if you don't know what questions to ask, and if you're not sure, that's where you need to bring in a partner like an Atlas to help you out with asking those questions.
And that seems intuitive, right? I mean, when you think about just think about like an antenna tunnel coming off of a dock door, where now you got to have a conversation around, well, what's the process today? Well, the process today is probably forklifts going in, and then they got to decouple the skid, and then people are scanning it, right? As opposed to, oh no, all that goes away because we're just going to scan everything right when it comes off the truck. Yeah. I mean, just think about that little move and how transformative that might be to a warehouse.
Change your operation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So to that end, I want to think about, and talk about when you should be getting involved in this process. So if you're working, if there's a reseller out there, it's like, hey, I know I'm great at the hardware. I've got all these connections. I know what I can do on that side of things, but I'm not necessarily ready to ask those big questions. When should they be bringing you into these, these opportunities? When should they be, or when do they typically do it? I guess that could be two questions there. Is when do you typically get brought in, and should it be actually a little bit earlier, and why? And then to that end, what does that a partnership look like to you? Like what are you looking for resellers? What is the give and take that you want resellers to do alongside you to make this a useful solution on both ends? So Tim, kick us off there, because I know it's probably a lot of your realm there too.
Yeah, oftentimes they do come in a little bit too late, but the good thing there is that it gives us a chance to kind of come in overtime and bring the system back, and correct. So a lot of times what we do is go on site and correct what a different organization has done, whether it be a simple antenna adjustment, tuning of the reader, changing the SOPs of, how many items are traveling through this area at one time. But, I think Steven's going to say the same thing as I am. We want to get in that conversation as early as possible, because that guidance, when you start conceptualizing what is it that we're trying to do, what's the problem that we're trying to solve, we can start discussing best practices and setting the expectations early on, rather than of our coming to us and saying, hey, I got this customer already pretty far along, we've done all this, we've qualified this tag. If they've done that and they've done that correctly, that's awesome. That's great. Let's help with our piece of the pie, which might be leveraging our software product Avancir or deploying the system for you. But we're always going to say, okay, talk to me. Why did you pick that tag? How did you qualify it? How much testing did you do? Because we're putting on our stamp on that system when we go deploy it.
Yeah,
I want to make sure that I know what we're deploying, why that tag was selected, why that reader was selected, what other qualification and applications discussions have we done to make sure that where we are right now is the best place we need to be for this project. So yeah, in short, get us in as early as possible so that we can help guide the entire project. But if it's a little bit further down the path, we can still help.
So you'd like to be there at the beginning, but you're also okay with being the superheroes that come in and save the day at the last minute.
That happens too many times, actually.
I'm not wearing a scope today, but
but you're willing to if necessary.
Yeah, I think, Tim's right? Like, we want to be involved as early as we can. But I think for me, a really important part of this equation is defining what the rules of engagement need to be, right? If a VAR brings an opportunity to us, we want to make sure we understand from the VAR what level of engagement that VAR wants us to have with the end customer, right? Like, we're very conscious about avoiding a channel conflict situation. as best as we possibly can, and working through that VAR that has brought that opportunity to us. So a part of that process is just understanding, okay, what role do you want Atlas to play? Do you want us to come in as a contractor, right? Or do you want us to come in as an extension of your team? Do you want to white label our software application? Like, tell us what your expectation is, and we'll do our best to meet those expectations, what those requests are. But I think that's a really important piece of that equation, is that we set those expectations early on, because we want to work together. I mean, that's the definition of a partnership, and partnerships break down if we're not clearly communicating what those expectations are and who's responsible for what for that, project. But another thing is, we want to enable the VAR to do this themselves too, right? Like, we want to come alongside them, equip them to be able to really leverage RFID technology for their customer base, because our ultimate objective is that they lean into Avancir software to deploy that for multiple instances for multiple clients, right? So that's what our objective is to really enable them to be able to. I mean, obviously we're here to back them up, but we want them to be the face that's in front of their customer, right? That's the ultimate objective for us, right? So initially those conversations may be, Atlas heavily involved, but as we sort of get further down the line, maybe there's less and less of a role that we're playing. But we're still leveraging our software, still supporting, from the back end, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's intuitive. If you guys could answer, like, you probably do some evaluation of the VAR as well. Like, do you do like a pre-meeting with the VAR to kind of evaluate what you think, how much they understand of the RFID process? And it's like, you must go back to like your office and say, my gosh, we're getting into a hornet's nest there. They don't know what they're talking about. Or, yeah, these people seem like they're going to be good to work with, right? I mean, do you do like pre-meetings with the resellers just to kind of figure out? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most certainly. We want to, kind of going back to what I mentioned, we want to understand not just what their expectation of us is, but also what our expectation of them, right? Like, we don't sort of approach these situations as if, the VAR is just going to stand idly by while Atlas does everything. Like I mentioned earlier, like, we do want them involved, because I think that it's going to be better for their business if they are involved, because they're going to be able to enable these applications for other clients that they have on their books, right? So I think that, that's the discussion that we want to have early on, before there's ever like an introduction to an end customer, or the ball starts rolling with the application itself. Like, those are lines that we want to clearly draw as early on as we possibly can.
I love that. I mean, because we talk about the fact that you guys do VAR enablement is awesome. We talk about the fact that in order for our business collectively, all of us to grow, it takes an ecosystem, right? So the fact that you're willing to be a partner and a part of the process, I think is a winning deal, right? Because we want to enable these resellers who have these big accounts and small accounts or whatever, to enable them with RFID.
Yeah, this was gold to me right there. You checked all the boxes and all the things that if I were looking for a partner, I'd want to hear. Like, we can come in and we can take over from you. We can work hand in hand. We can white glove. Yeah. And more maybe importantly, that you're cool with all that and you're open to all that too, because not everybody is. Some people are like, no, we want all the credit and glory for ourselves. And I don't think that is not necessarily what works in this channel. We know it's not really what works. So.
Yeah. I mean, in order for the business to expand, maybe if we owned our own barcoding technology, John and Dean's barcode technology, I mean, we're going to need some hand holding for the first couple RFID implementations, right? So we're going to lean on these guys, but then maybe, we'll get the technical expertise in house where we're doing our own site surveys and stuff like that. And we're using their software. Yeah. It's right. That's how business goes.
Yeah. That's exactly how
we got to work on our name. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. That's my job. Don't worry. I'll take care of that.
Okay. Thanks.
You can be the front man out there pitching everything. I'll come up with a much better name than John and Dean's barcoding. Yeah. All right. Well, in a moment here, Tim and Stephen are going to tell us a little more about how Atlas actually, can help you win some business and what they actually have to offer out there in the market. And they've hinted at the Avancir a little bit there, and they'll talk to you more about that. Before we do that, though, a quick note of what's happening around BlueStar Nation. ISVs on Tap is back with some new episodes featuring software partners that are ready to work with you. Recent upcoming discussions feature Redbeam, Lifesaver Mobile, EcoPrint Q, and QR Logics.
Nice.
Host and BlueStar's ISV manager Josh Kelly explores their solutions, the industries and challenges that they tackle, and how working with them can help you go out and actually grow your business. Oh, and they share a beer at the end of every episode.
I know, right? Then they talk about beers,
which I still think is all that this is really about. But
the beer, yes.
Yeah, but Josh figured out a clever way to turn drinking beer on the job into part of our business strategy.
That's
somehow.
right. Yeah.
So,
kudos.
Exactly. Check out ISVs on Tap on YouTube. You can also find a link in our show notes to the playlist and check out some of the previous episodes. We've got a few more coming out over the next few weeks or so. So check them out. You might find a cool new partner to work with. Hey, while you're doing that, take a moment before you go looking at some other videos to like and subscribe to our channel. Leave us a review or write a comment in on this episode. If you heard something interesting here that you want to weigh in on or have some thoughts about, leave a comment. Give us some ideas of what you'd like to hear about and talk about on future episodes. Check out our BlueStar Nation blog. Send your ideas into us. We want to know what you want to hear about on the show. So if you liked what you heard here, but maybe there's an aspect of the RFID puzzle that you're still struggling with, let us know. We'll be happy to find some folks. Maybe it's bringing these guys back on again to talk more about it. We'll be happy to dive into whatever needs you actually have out there. But you have to tell us. You can always find us on the BlueStar LinkedIn page, or you can email us directly, nation@bluestarinc.com. All right, let's wrap things up as always with a little VAR value. And again, I think we've made the case that Atlas knows what they're talking about in all things RFID, and they are a viable partner that you should probably want to bring in to your applications and to your strategy, whether you are already embedded in RFID or just looking to get started. Maybe you're not sure where to start. So let's start there, Tim. How are you going to go out and help resellers grow their RFID business? If they're already doing it, or expand and add it to their offerings if they're not already. And more importantly, obviously, talk to us about those professional services that you head up and the Avancir software application as well.
Gotcha. So our customer base is actually a really interesting mixture of end users, VARs, ISVs, SaaS companies, or systems integrators. And it's interesting that we're able to serve all of these different customer bases because Atlas is a one-stop shop, right? We provide a complete solution, but we don't always need to. As we kind of hinted to earlier, we often are working with a VAR who will come to us and say, hey, we've worked with the customer, come pretty far along, and here's the hardware architecture that we're working with. Is a pretty simple application, but we have this gap, we have this missing piece. They don't know what to do with the software, and so we have that piece of the puzzle where we can help them with. And then kind of we've been talking about Avancir a lot, just mentioning it, but I kind of want to talk about what it is and what it evolved from really quickly. So I mentioned earlier in this podcast that Atlas, back in like 2007, 2008, we started as a solutions provider. We were offering hardware, software, and services, deploying solutions before there was ever an Atlas RFID store.com. And that has evolved, and we learned a lot. We found commonality. We were doing custom solutions for many, many years where we were building, developing, complete tailored applications and systems for organizations. And that became kind of a nightmare to support over the years. So what we found was a commonality in all of these systems that we deployed, and we built a very robust, extremely configurable inventory and asset management system called Avancir, which has helped a lot of large organizations so far. It's a fairly new offering to Atlas. We've been offering for Stephen for 4 or 5 years now, somewhere around there. But just because it's new doesn't mean that the concept of it is new, right? We picked all of the good things that we've liked from these systems that we have deployed. So the short of that is that if a VAR does have a customer that they're working with and they have a hardware portfolio that they're going to deliver, or that they've already won a bid, but they're missing this piece of the pie, they're missing, maybe it's the software and integration with SAP or the WMS, and then maybe they need help qualifying the hardware and understanding, not necessarily the hardware, just the tag placement. How many tags need to be on the item? Is it a single tag application or a double tag application? So we'll leverage our professional services to not only help them qualify tag placement, tag selection, but also to manage the installation of that entire system and then maintain it and support it going forward. So there are a lot of ways that we can help these organizations that are delivering a piece of the pie, maybe a lot of the pie, right? Maybe they're delivering 75% of that solution to their customer and missing a piece. That's where we can come in and complete the entire pie for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that professional services of Avancir on both of those products, there's margin to be made for the VAR, right? And I think for Avancir specifically, it's a pretty common term in our office, and that's ARR, annual recurring revenue, right? And recurring revenue, everybody's looking for those opportunities, right? And I think for us, that's a really strong focus, right? So, I think that's something that the VAR can take advantage of as well, is that, as much, recurring revenue that they can add to their book of business, right? That's more predictable revenue for them. So I think that's a really important thing to consider as they're considering, something like Avancir. And then just to hit on Tim's point again, Avancir is very configurable, and it might sound a little silly, but we've tracked everything from chickens to jet engines. I mean, and the chicken was alive and moving, right? So the types of applications that Avancir can be a fit for, right? It's effectively, if we can tag it and we can read that tag, Avancir could be a really good fit for that specific application. So it is just really configurable, everything from the fields to the item types to the activities that a customer needs to, use. It's configurable. So, that can really add a lot of value and maybe enable RFID for some applications maybe previously thought impossible. So I think that's where we could really help add some value there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important. And what it sounds to me like is that Atlas would be a great way to protecting whatever that customer relationship is that they already have, but they're needing an RFID application. I mean, it seems intuitive here that you guys understand that. You understand what the channel is and how to work with VARs and resellers to enable them to go after more business, right? And ultimately leverage those relationships that they have, which we talk about ad nauseum here. And adding on a great partner like an Atlas RFID.
Yeah. I'll just say it again. This is everything you should want to hear from a partner. Especially the idea of no matter where you are in your RFID journey or how much you can or can't do, they can help you fill in the gap. And that is the exact kind of partner that you should be looking for out there. Is, hey, I've got some missing elements of my business that I need to be a little bit stronger or just filled in entirely or taken off my plate whenever possible. This is the kind of partner you should be looking for to help you.
And God forbid you got a customer that's probably maybe out there looking at RFID solutions. You don't want to miss that opportunity, right? You don't want to be swept in the end where they've engaged somebody else. It's gone bad. I mean, get in front of it and offer up the service and partner up with folks like this so that you can get that engagement.
So you don't have to be the person that says no either.
That's right.
No, I think most people in our industry,
RFID,
we don't like to say no.
We don't do no.
Saying no usually doesn't help you grow your business very much. So
that's right.
That's a great point.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, that was great stuff. So atlasrfidstore.com. If you want to learn more about their offerings, there's going to be a link in the show notes that you can check them out too. And of course, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll be happy to connect you with the fine folks over there at Atlas, or reach out to Tim and Steven directly as well. All right. Let's wrap up as always with our favorite segment of each episode. What's on your radar?
Ah, yes.
This is where we get to talk about anything we feel like in the world of tech, innovation, science.
Can it be RFID?
News. Could be RFID.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't matter what. But what's on your radar this week, gents? Steven, kick us off here. What's going on with you right now?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting question, and yeah, my topic just happens to be about RFID. It's kind of what I live and breathe.
Understood.
I think one of the things that's really interesting that's developing in the market is embedded RAIN RFID. So we've seen NFC in smart devices for over a decade now, and I fully expect that we're going to be seeing RAIN RFID functionality make its way to consumer devices within the next 3 to 5 years, if not sooner, right? And I think that the impact there is going to be huge. I mean, just things like how retailers can engage with their customers, right? It's going to be significant, right? Like we've already seen this packaged into a device like the Zebra EM45, you know, kind of for enterprise. But I mean, it's just a matter of time before it's in a consumer device. So to take this point a little bit further, GS1 has already established standards that support delivery of web-based content directly to mobile devices without the need for an application using UHF technology. So, I mean, I think it just has really big implications for easing the transition that companies are having, to make with, engaging with customers to post sale of product, right? And it also has big implications for what we're seeing in the EU with the digital product passport requirement. In fact, like, here's a tag that I have that's a little, a satin label that you'd see in the back of a shirt that has a UHF RFID tag embedded. So, I think in the not so distant future, we're going to be able to tap this tag and, see information about that product, everything from its origin to, what its warranty information is, looking back at the labor practice that was used to harvest the cotton or whatever it may be, that's not, I don't think that's too far out for us, right? And I think that's one thing that's really interesting that's happening in the industry. And I think it kind of goes beyond this, right? Like we've seen embedded RFID like in the healthcare realm for a long time, for example, like a device that uses consumables and there's an embedded RFID reader in the device. And when the consumable is inserted, right, like the device ensures that its authenticity, that it's an approved consumable for that device, just to make sure everything's running as it should. And there's not a counterfeit item that's being used for that process. But I think, embedded RFID and I don't know, something like a coffee maker, right? Like you put your coffee pot in that coffee maker, and you're able to see, not just where the farm that coffee was harvested from, but also the field, right? Like having that origin data surface to the end client, and just taking it from the source all the way through to the consumer. So that transparency, I think that's something that's really on the forefront and really something that's interesting that I'm following right now. Really excited about.
That's cool. Yeah, we had Teresa from GS1 and Mary Lou from AIM on here talking about that, and they were getting super geeked about, of course Teresa was, because that's part of her baby.
She lives in that world. Yeah.
Didn't we talk about coffee when we were talking about examples of that? There was
maybe I know she was talking about tagging like her kids' furniture. So
that's right.
She could ping them or whatever with make your bed or whatever, or something like that.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm all for these interesting use cases that and again, especially if you're able to tie it to these devices that we're all always carrying around and staring at all the time anyway. Might as well have another useful way to. And I was just thinking that because I just bought like a refurbished stick vacuum a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
And it was the thing where it came with all the stuff but didn't have any of the instructions and stuff with it.
Yes. Okay.
And so it's one of those things where I'm going on the internet and I'm looking up the owner manual stuff. Like, how handy would it be if there was a little an RFID
embedded
tag
RFID tag that took you to the site?
I could tap, show me everything I need, give me access to all the stuff I need.
That's right.
Simple, practical to use cases. I love this kind of stuff.
That's good stuff.
Awesome. Tim, what's on your radar?
Yeah, well, just to piggyback off what Steven said, because it just made me think, people are already working on a lot of these things. Every time that I think that I've got a bright idea and I'm about to make it big with some RFID or NFC application, I do a little bit of research. I'm like, gosh, people are already started working on this, whether it be some interactive map that, saves pictures of every place I've gone. I can tap my phone. Or I've got some friends that are big into fishing and they do catch and release bass fishing. And being able to put a tag on each fish to be able to see the story about where how long it's been, who else caught it. That everything exists already. So, like what Steven said, just to back it up, we're excited about it because we see it happening. A lot of these organizations are smaller or starting, but they're about to gain traction, especially with household applications and appliances, things like that. But the thing that I've been kind of keeping my eye on recently is passive Bluetooth and printable Bluetooth. So, it kind of reminds me of back when I started with Atlas back in like 2012. There was no such thing as a 5-cent tag.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And the capabilities of, getting a small inlay, RFID inlay, to be able to communicate from 30 feet away just wasn't possible. But chip sensitivity, has gotten to a point where we're able to do really cool things with UHF passive RFID. And now there's passive Bluetooth, which is battery-free Bluetooth, or even Bluetooth that's a printable battery onto a label type sticker, where those have a shorter lifespan. And there's one organization in the industry called Wiliot that actually has a patent on the passive version of it, and they have a really cool product, which is a completely battery-free Bluetooth sticker. You have all of the capabilities and features of Bluetooth, long range locating, with a sticker that can be around 25 cents, and that's early, quote unquote. They've been around for a while, but it's early, and so I'm interested to see what does that look like in 10 years. And we're really excited to add those products to our portfolio here soon.
Nice. Yeah. It's a good pick up on that. Yep.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right, Dean, what about you? What's on your radar?
Okay. Well, gentlemen, I got a question for you. Would you like a bed on your next flight that you go on?
Sure.
Okay, yes. Like in the economy section?
Like one of those 6 a.m. flights or something. Yeah.
I've been traveling a lot lately. Everybody's saying yes. I don't know that I like this idea. All right. So United Airlines came out with the announcement. They are letting you turn your economy seat. So you don't even have to be up in the first class. Right? Economy seat into a couch if you'd like. So it's United, and they announced March 24th that they have new seat offering called the Relax Row. And this is meant to help you fall asleep or get comfy while you're in the economy area. Okay. So it's going to be offered in 2027.
I feel like those two things don't go. Relax.
Well, this is where I'm at. That's why I want to have the debate here. Okay. That's why it's on my radar. So they're going to fix 200 of their planes with this. Okay. So now here it is. The United Relax Row is ideal for families traveling with small children. Okay. Let me paint the picture first. So you're in the back of the plane or whatever, you're in the economy section. Right. You buy a whole row, which is three seats. Right. And then those 3 seats, it basically transform like, you've got this thing under your legs and it clicks up and then you get a mattress, you get a blanket and 2 pillows if you get the Relax Row. Okay. So now there you go. There's the setup. And so
you still have to buy 3 tickets.
Well, okay. We'll go there in a second. Yes. I think you still have to buy tickets. We'll go there in a second. So they're saying it's ideal for families that travel with small children, solo travels, couples. I do not want exactly. That was my reaction. It's like, whoa! What are we doing there?
I feel like we're going down a whole different path there. Yeah,
it doesn't come with the tent and the
planes
door.
Are rocking,
Yeah. The Mile High Club just took a whole new meeting on there.
Doubt.
But they're that's how they're going to start marketing this thing. So. I don't know, gentlemen. When I first read it, I'm like, and then I was like, ooh, no. Okay, so to your point, Tim.
Is the area still going to be the same size area?
Yes.
Because you're still not, I don't care if you give me an extension and a mattress there and I'm going to lay down.
No, you still get the same amount of
I'm still too large of a human being to lay in a
I was going to say, you're going to be hanging out in the aisle.
Yeah, exactly.
No. You got to keep your feet in the aisle. Well, Tim, you're right, because I guess you would have to buy all 3 seats, but I can imagine a nightmare scenario where, I'm only buying 2 of the seats and I'm going to convert those. Now you got to sit next to a person that's laying in this couch-like
like
thing.
A cat in there or something, yeah.
With their feet all up in your business and stuff like that. I don't know, man. I don't know that I'm sold on this just yet. It sounds on the surface like, okay, I could lay down for a flight from here to Vegas, right? That's a 4-hour flight. It's like, okay, I'll lay down.
It feels like yet another desperate way that airlines are trying to convince us that being an economy is fun and cool and not just being shoved into a tin can for a few hours.
All right. Well, the next time y'all are on a plane, take a look at that row and say, do I really want to sell that to somebody and have that there? I don't know. No.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that.
When you first said that, I was imagining those like Air Emirates.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, I would take that. Right. Yeah. Or Delta One, you've got this pod all to yourself and it's, I get that. Not back in the economy section.
No.
I could fall asleep on a 40-minute flight. I fly pretty much every single week. And I often take that little hopper from Birmingham to Atlanta. It's a 40-minute flight.
Yep.
And I'm snoozing.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be working on those flights. Flights these days,
Yeah. Well, Steven,
All right, let's cut that out of the final broadcast. Yeah, Shane's not going to want to see that. Yeah.
Steven's got a really good point, though. Like, how are we going to expense Relax Row? What are you doing in the Relax Row, dude?
It's going to be such a challenge.
That is a great
I've done
point.
more creative things with finance before. Like, I can get it through. I think I can get it through.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, man. All right,
all right.
John, what's on your radar, my friend?
That's good stuff. All right. So most of us do some form of social media still, potentially.
Yes.
But most of us have probably also soured a lot on social media.
Yes.
Especially with like what the algorithms actually do and
yes.
the kind of random sponsored crap and ads you have to see in your feed, or your feed just not really being what you want. Well, let's add AI into the equation.
Oh,
too.
okay.
Which, granted, most social media platforms have started shoving AI in where they can.
Sure, yeah.
But one of the platforms that I am still somewhat active on, and at least seem to still like, is BlueSky, who has come up with a AI social media assistant that their CIO built called Addy, which is an agentic social app who's designed basically to be conversational to help you craft your overall feed the way you want it to be, and not just necessarily, although it kind of feels like it flies a little bit in the face of the advertising portion of things, but it lets you basically craft your own feed by having a conversation with an AI and saying, hey, this is what I would like to do. So for instance, I'm a baseball guy, so maybe, and baseball's big on BlueSky. That's why one of the reasons I like hanging out over there. They have great baseball writers and stuff over there. So maybe I say, hey, I want to have my feed built around useful fantasy baseball tidbits and insights into what's happening in the game. And so it could design a feed based on that for you. And you could continue to have a conversation and build from there. Like, no, I don't want this kind of stuff. Yes, I want this kind of stuff.
So control over your content, not just via what you may have hovered on.
Right, exactly.
Setting the algorithm.
Not not just I happen to click on
why
something.
haven't more
and
done
now
this?
I'm
I
getting
think
it.
that's a good point.
I don't know. It's. I mean, again, I wonder if, because I'm pretty sure BlueSky is not really built around advertising yet, still, as much as some of the other applications are. So I wonder if it's because, like, all right, the advertisers have their goals of what they want you to see and access, and
I don't know
stay
anything
on
about
that
BlueSky.
platform
Yeah.
for as long as possible. So maybe there's a little more, ability to do that kind of stuff here. But I thought it was interesting. I'm like, hey, I could see myself trying that out. Maybe this will be the last gasp effort for social media to convince people to stick around for a little bit longer.
Stay. Dedicate more of your time.
Giving you more control over what's actually showing up. Because I'll be honest, there's a lot of platforms I left because I felt like even though I had exactly who I wanted to follow, I still had a feed that was filled with garbage that I didn't actually want to see or care about. So check it out.
I don't know, man.
Addy, which should be available fairly soon on BlueSky to kind of craft your own social media feed if you're interested in it.
Fair enough.
All right, that does it for us today. That is what's on our radar. Stephen Wood, Tim Prybl, thank you guys so much for joining us. Check out Atlas RFID. And again, if you're looking for a partner in this space, these are the guys to go to. I think they've made their case more than enough for you here.
Fair enough.
So until next time, we got to sign off. Dean, do you think John and Deed's barcoding business can handle live chickens?
No.
Yeah, I don't think that's something we're going to be able to manage.
We're not going to be able to.
We're going to need
Atlas RFID.
Like Atlas for that. Yeah, exactly. All right, folks. We'll see you out there in the nation.